Will AI ever replace human tutors? What skills will future tutors need to stay relevant? We need to constantly always look at the new technology and stay up to date. Welcome back to the Business of Teaching podcast. If you're new here, this is the podcast where we discuss what it takes to run a teaching business in today's world. Now, as always, Riley, can you give us an update on ArcPlatforms?
A new thing that was released, so notifications. There's quite a few things that can happen on the platform, and now the user has control over what notifications they receive or don't receive to their email and to the push notification to the app installed on their phone.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I know we had a bunch of requests for that feature, so yeah, good job getting that one through the door. Well, yeah, now let's jump into the content of today's episode. Do you want to quickly introduce it?
Sure. So today we're talking about the human teacher versus the AI teacher.
Yeah.
And you're going to ask me some questions.
Yeah.
And I've got a few things to say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's how it works, isn't it? Someone asks questions and someone answers it. Fantastic. So the first question for today is, will AI ever replace human tutors, or is there something irreplaceable about human teaching? What's your opinion on this?
Will they ever replace? Ever implies, every minute of the future, right?
Yeah.
Every year.
So
I think you can't say no to that.
Yeah.
I think eventually that, there's going to be the psychological aspects of having a human teacher or tutor that the AI just isn't as good at yet. But in the future, where we have our minds being tricked by, say an android, like you look at a science fiction movie, an android that looks like a human, exactly, right? That would be pretty convincing, and I bet it would convince your mind of all the benefits psychologically teachers have versus just AI. I would say at that point, it wouldn't just be tutors and teachers getting replaced. It would probably be a lot of professions that psychology component is very, very good for whatever service that is. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is, if you can get AI to the level that it replaces human beings, then we can replace teachers. But any level below that, then no. There's still benefits
that's
of
what I
human
think.
teachers.
I think that exactly right what you said. And that point, I don't know when that is, but it doesn't seem like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It seems like we're on the train that it won't stop towards that happening.
It does seem like we'll get there. I mean, whether it'll be in 2500 the year, right, or whether it will be in 100 years, we don't know.
I wouldn't put it out of the possibility of a decade from now. It's probably, there's quite a bit to do to trick your mind into, you and me sitting here right now.
Yeah.
If you were a robot, it would be hard to believe it.
Yeah.
But that's the level it would probably take to completely replace. And, replacing a tutor, or a teacher, it also depends on what, I guess, who the student is. Because if you're looking at a younger student, there's a lot of psychology that we'll go into that goes in their growing up as a younger student. They need that, and it benefits them more than someone who's already been through that and maybe an older, student of society and getting taught something that is something that they wouldn't need.
So what you're talking about? Yeah. So what
it also depends on the student, is what I'm saying.
Right. So what you're saying is, like, for the, say, like babies or like really, really young, like children.
Yeah,
essentially.
maybe primary school, all the way through primary school, maybe a few years into high school, like maybe it is at a point where, who knows, tertiary. Maybe it's tertiary. Maybe it's just, when you go up to college, university, high school, that student would probably be like more able to be replaced before we get to the full, I guess, Android, whatever you want to call it.
No, but what I'm saying is like for these younger students, there might be like child language acquisition components where, you have to have a parent or an adult, a human adult, who's slowly scaffolding the learning of the child, and the child is learning all these human behaviors that help them acquire language. In what areas does AI struggle compared to a human tutor?
Right. Well, in the previous question, I said some parts of psychology that are quite essential before a teacher is fully replaced. So some of these things, right? Emotional connection. In a teacher-student, connection, a student gets encouraged by and motivated by the teacher by emotional cues and things that the teacher gives and the student picks up on, right? Now these...
Like non-verbal, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like non-verbal things in the classroom, and these sort of things don't particularly come across, I guess, in a chat, format if you're looking at ChatGPT. Another thing, social interaction. So a student can model behaviors being in that social environment with another human, right? This isn't just, a one-to-one, but also in a classroom with others also being taught. That's something that AI is currently lacking. You can imagine why, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, right now AI is it's a chatbot, right? So, right now we're still in the early days of this, but I mean, these things can, I guess, ultimately be overcome, like you said before. Yeah.
Right. Another thing, the cognitive modeling, right? So how someone goes along their chain of thought with solving a problem. Now, because a human teacher, the AI can still do this. It's getting good at it, but the teacher, because of how they specifically learnt that learning material, they have a unique view of how the student would best learn it and how to go through a problem, how to solve that problem. That part that the human has, that is something that the AI is just kind of lacking behind at the moment. Personalized adaptability. So if you look at a classroom where the student particularly isn't the same as the next, and this means that how they take in the information is different to the next, how they solve problems, and how quickly they can do all that, learning a new thing, solving a new problem. That is quite different from student to student, and that adaptability is something that the human has an upper edge in, and they can be in the classroom. There's a classroom setting, and they can adapt very fast. Visually what's going on with that student. They can pick up on the non-verbal cues and all sorts of things that currently the AI is not able to do, unless potentially they do have vision in the future to pick up on those non-verbals. The next thing I would say is trust and ethical development. So having a trusted, teacher, student, that is not just, to flow information and teach that student how to do math or English. It's also, at a younger age particularly, bringing them up to be like a moral, societal citizen that they can fit in to society with, basically. And to be honest, that isn't something that when you go to ChatGPT or an AI, they're explicitly directing the student towards. They're more just right in that spot doing the question, nothing outside of it, right? Nothing outside of the learning. And that is something that I think for a society as a whole probably needs to stay, and I don't know if the AI can ever do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a lot of these things that the AI can or can't do, depends on the teacher. If your teacher is relatively like not that good, they're gonna fall for these issues as well.
Yeah.
I'm always of the opinion that the AI doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than the average teacher at the end of the day, right? And then you have better outcomes for the students simply because, the average level of teaching is better than the existing level of teaching, right? So I don't think it's necessarily that far away, to be honest. There just needs to have, better development with all these other non-verbal cues and these things. But yeah, there's probably some governance related problems when it comes to cameras in classrooms as well, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably a thing that is a big issue in Western classrooms, but I'm sure in East Asia, they don't care about that stuff. It's probably already happening right now. Yeah.
Probably.
But anyway, fantastic. Well, I'll move on to the next question. So I think that leads to a very, very good sort of question. It's quite similar in the sense that are parents and students ready to trust AI-driven tutoring over human interaction?
Well, first of all, I don't have a say because I'm not a parent or a student at the moment, but I would say that from what I've researched, it seems that there's a few camps where the overwhelming, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but majority would be more trusting of a human at the moment in tutoring and teaching situations. But there are people that, fall into the other camp where, they're more, I guess, progressive in their technology adoption and they trust it, right? I wouldn't say they trust it more than the human. I would just say that the conveniences that, I guess, AI bring, which is 24/7 low-cost intelligence where you can ask anything. Would you trust what the output is 100% of the time? Maybe not. But would you also trust a human 100% of the time? Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the setting, right? Maybe
you
a young student probably wouldn't think twice about what the teacher's correctness is, but I guess older students, they start to think, well, maybe they're not 100% right with this. Maybe they're not. It depends what field it is as well. Like, with deterministic stuff, mathematics, I would say that you can be confident that you can be taught and trust the output of AI better than if you were doing things like English per se, right?
Yeah, that are more subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like, just to add from my side as well, I mean, obviously when it comes to like trusting the interaction, I think it's just something that'll take time. Like, when planes first got autopilot, I guess people would have been scared that, you can't trust autopilot. But now, after 30, 40 years of use, autopilot is better, objectively speaking, than human pilots, right? But we still have both, because I think there's a very innate human thing where we want to be able to blame other humans, right? If someone messes up in terms of teaching our kids, there's someone I can blame, someone I can sue. But if it's an AI, that gets murky, right? And I think that's where the gist of it is. You want to have someone who's the spokesperson of the teaching and who you can blame. And look, maybe it's a thing where, you'll just have an AI and a human overseeing everyone. So then the human is the one to blame if the AI messes up, and then they can sort of tweak the AI to be, roughly what the student is. Maybe that would be the model going forwards in the future, but it's still something up in the air.
You could ask yourself, how how many instances of error would you accept a human versus an AI, right? Like say, I'd like to be able to, I can't sue the AI for giving me a wrong answer, but I can to the human, so I'll trust the human more. You could also say, well, the AI is going to produce less error than the human, potentially. That's something to think about.
Yeah, but like I said, I think in general, if from a perfectly rational perspective, as long as the AI is better than the average teacher, then you're good to go. But look, from a human-centric perspective, the AI is going to be held to a standard that is about 10 times, 100 times higher than the average human teacher.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
And in my research, it wasn't just, getting an answer correct and whatnot. They sort of trust, I guess, the teacher, the human teacher more, to deliver a better education, not just for the content, like that they're going to, or the skills. It's like also the, the emotional support, the everything else that goes along with that, that brings you up to be a human in society. Because, if we talk about just school per se, you're not just getting, how to do your addition, subtraction, finish your sentences. You're not just getting that when you're at school. You're getting a whole upbringing and coming out with the ability to be a human with a good sense of yourself in the world and be able to interact with everyone else in a civil way.
Yeah, I mean, You're not wrong. School serves multiple purposes apart from learning.
Yeah.
It's a childcare, right?
Yeah.
But it's also a place where you learn how to become an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
From a social perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. But look, that's something for another time to discuss. Fantastic. So last question for today. What skills will future tutors need to stay relevant in an AI-driven educational system?
Well, I think the things that they have over the AI now, you said that some teachers aren't as good as others at the interpersonal, emotional, mentoring aspect of teaching. And because they could be better than the AI at that, they have to be. Like, as a teacher, you have to be focused on those things. You're not going to get beaten in how you deliver information anymore. It's those things that could be better, like a better way that you teach. And the other thing I would say is you have to be willing to work alongside AI, right? You're not going to do yourself any service by being a teacher that completely puts it to the side. I don't want that. That's not going to replace me. If you're not using it and evolving with the times, you're left behind, and you have to. It doesn't just make, if you're a teaching business, your business more efficient, like how you run it.
Yeah.
It also makes the service better because you're delivering a more efficient service, as you're able to make those lesson plans faster, meaning like the build up of students that you may have, some of them were not given the best lesson plan in the past, but now they can be because you do have this AI co-pilot to make it with you as a teacher. Every teacher has to adopt it, every tutor has to adopt it. It's just what they need to do to stay relevant in this future.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, to finish off today, obviously, we'll go to our usual segment.
So every week we always say one thing that we learnt, and this week it's your turn.
Yeah. So the thing I learned today, I don't know if it's learned. I think it's more reinforced, is that you have to continually learn and get better. This should be something that's fundamental, and it's something that you do even when you're in school, when you're out of school, and even when you're like really, really old, right? And the reason I have this is I had a conversation this week for one of these tutoring company individuals that I talked to, and he mentioned that he's got tutors in his organization who are 85 years old, close to 90 years old, and people who are in their 60s and 70s who are tutoring for his organization. And one of the things he mentioned is that these tutors and teachers completely refuse to learn how to send email, for instance, right? I was just thinking, this sort of struck me the wrong way, because as a student, you're always told that you need to continually learn, you need to continually get better. You go to school not just to learn maths and English, but you go to school to learn how to learn, right? And then the fact that this individual's tutors, who are, they're 80, they're quite, they're not young, put it that way, but they refuse to learn how to write an email, something that takes about 5 minutes to do. I mean, I don't really think they're practicing what they're preaching. They're just, doing something that they did in the 1980s, and they're still teaching the same thing, right? It leads me to think, have they updated their learning or their teaching methods? Are they still teaching people the way they were teaching in the 1980s, right? And I think it's sort of given me a warning for my own self that, like, when I become a lot older and when the new technology rises that I don't understand, I have to continually resist the urge to stay in the 2020s, right?
Yeah.
We need to constantly always look at the new technology and stay up to date. Because if this individual isn't willing to take 15 minutes out of his day and learn how to write an email, how can we expect his students to spend an hour with him and learn how to do algebra? Yeah.
That's right.
So, I think that's a really important learning that, everyone in the teaching industry should, really, really live by. Like, is that if you're teaching yourself, right, you should also be learning as well constantly.
Right. Well, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
These people seem like, 100 years away from the current year of AI, if they're not even doing email.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to each their own. And hopefully the students that are getting educated by them don't, learn the same habits.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
But anyway, look, I wish them good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for listening to our podcast today, listening or watching. Please give our socials a like, and we'll see you next week.